In this part of the course, we are going to talk about the UK political system. A very important factor in understanding the nature of the British political system is the fundamental continuity of that system. For almost 1,000 years, Britain has not been invaded or occupied. The last successful invasion of England was in 1066 by the Normans. This explains why, almost uniquely in the world, Britain has no written constitution. The political system is not logical or always fully democratic. Change has been very gradual, pragmatic, and built on consensus. British political history has essentially been a struggle to shift political power and accountability from the all-powerful king who claimed that he obtained his right to rule from God, to a national parliament that was increasingly representative of ordinary people and accountable to ordinary people. There have been many milestones along this long and troubled road to democracy. A key date in this evolution was 1215, when King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, which involved him sharing power with the barons. The so-called Model Parliament was summoned by King Edward I in 1295 and is regarded as the first representative assembly. The bicameral nature of the British Parliament, Commons and Lords, emerged in 1341, and the two-chamber model of the legislature has served as a template in many other parliamentary systems. The Bill of Rights of 1689, which is still in effect, lays down limits on the powers of the Crown and sets out the rights of Parliament, rules for freedom of speech in Parliament, requirement for regular elections to Parliament, and the right to petition the monarch without fear of retribution. Another important feature of British political history is that three parts of the United Kingdom, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, have a special status and have local administrations with a wide range of responsibilities. The three arms of the state. The British political system is headed by the monarchy, but essentially the powers of the monarch as the head of state are ceremonial. Britain is governed by Her Majesty's government in the name of the Queen. The Prime Minister is an MP and head of the government. The leader of the party that wins the most seats in the general election is appointed Prime Minister by the Queen. The Prime Minister is officially responsible for choosing the other members of the government. Traditionally, the choice of monarch has been determined on the hereditary principle, which means that the oldest child of a monarch was the next in line to the throne. In classical political theory, there are three arms of the state. First, the executive, the ministers who run the country and propose new laws. Second, the legislature, the elected body that passes new laws. Third, the judiciary, the judges and the courts, who ensure that everyone obeys the law. Unlike separation of powers-based system, the UK government is not separate from the legislature, but is formed by the party with the most members of the parliament in the Commons. This is often referred to as the fusion of powers. The UK Parliament. The House of Commons is the lower chamber, that's the one with the most authority. The Commons is chaired by the Speaker. The House of Commons currently comprises 650 members of Parliament. The number varies slightly from time to reflect population change. Each member in the House of Commons represents a geographical constituency. Every citizen aged 18 or over can vote once in the constituency in which they live. Voting is not compulsory. The House of Lords. This is the upper chamber, but the one with less authority. Its main roles are to revise legislation and keep a check on government by scrutinizing its activities. The House of Lords is an utterly bizarre institution that has no parallel anywhere in the democratic world. The explanation for the unusual nature of the Lords goes back to the UK history. The British political system has evolved very slowly, peacefully, and is not totally logical or democratic. There is no fixed number of members of the House of Lords, and the number fluctuates because of deaths, retirements, and new appointments. But currently there are almost 800 members, many more than in the House of Commons. Historically, most members of the House of Lords have been hereditary peers. This meant that years ago a king or queen nominated a member of the aristocracy to be a member of the House, and since then the right to sit in the House has passed through the family from generation to generation. Clearly, this is totally undemocratic, and the last Labour government abolished the right of all but 92 of these hereditary peers to sit in the House. Almost all the other members of today's House of Lords are what we call life peers. This means that they have been chosen by the Queen on the advice of the government to sit in the House for as long as they live, but afterwards no member of their family has the right to sit in the House. Almost 200 are former members of Parliament. Others are distinguished figures in fields such as education, health, social policy. A small number of other members, 26, are archbishops and bishops of the Church of England. The legislative process. In the British political system, almost all legislation is proposed by the government, and much of it comes from promises made in the manifesto of the relevant political party at the last election. At the beginning of each annual session of the Parliament, the main bills to be considered are announced by the Queen in a speech opening that year's session of Parliament. All legislation has to be approved by both houses of Parliament. Political parties. The idea of political parties first took form in Britain, and the Conservative Party claims to be the oldest political party in the world. Political parties began to form during the English civil wars of the 1640s and 1650s. First, there were Royalists and Parliamentarians, then Tories and Whigs. Whereas the Whigs wanted to curtail the power of the monarch, the Tories, today the Conservatives, were seen as the patriotic party. Today there are four major political parties in the British parliamentary system: the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Scottish National, and the Liberal Democrat Party. In the past, class was a major determinant of voting intention in British politics, with most working-class electors voting Labour and most middle-class electors voting Conservative. These days, class is much less important because working-class numbers have shrunk and now represent only 43% of the electorate. Except at the extremes of wealth, lifestyles are more similar. Class does not determine voting intention so much as values, trust, competence, and nationalism. The main differences between the political parties concern how to tackle poverty and inequality, the levels and forms of taxation, the extent of state intervention in the economy, the balance between the collective rights and individual rights, the terms of the UK's departure from the European Union. The UK government. All government ministers have to be a member of either the House of Commons or the House of Lords. The number of ministers varies from administration to administration, but typically there will be around 120, the 20 or so most senior being cabinet ministers. The Prime Minister. In practice, the most important person in the British political system is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is a very powerful figure and has increasingly been behaving more like a president in other political systems, especially in the area of foreign policy. The official residence of the Prime Minister is at 10 Downing Street in central London. government departments. The most important political departments are called the Treasury, the Ministry of Finance, responsible for the raising of all taxes, control of all government expenditure, plus the general management of the economy. The head of the Treasury is called the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The Home Office, the Ministry of the Interior, responsible for criminal matters, policing and immigration. The head of the Home Office is called the Home Secretary. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, responsible for all the international relations, especially membership of the European Union. The head of the Foreign Office is called the Foreign Secretary. Many other UK government departments are similar to those in other countries and cover subjects such as education, health, transport, industry, and justice. However, there are also small departments for Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And the last branch of power is the UK judiciary. The British judicial branch is extremely complex. Unlike most countries which operate a single system of law, the UK operates 3 separate legal systems. One for England and Wales, one for Scotland, and one for Northern Ireland. Currently, Wales is slowly developing a 4th jurisdiction. Although bound by similar principles, these systems differ in form and manner of operation. For centuries, the House of Lords was the Supreme Court of Appeal on points of law for the whole of the UK in civil cases and for England, Wales, and Northern Ireland in criminal cases. This was an unusual role for a legislative body. In most other parliaments, the judiciary is separate from the legislature. From October 2009, the judicial powers of the House of Lords transferred to the new and separate Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. The Supreme Court comprises 12 judges, known as Justices of the Supreme Court. They include a president, a deputy president, appointed by the Queen on the recommendation of the Judicial Appointments Commission. The Supreme Court, as well as being the final court of appeal, plays an important role in the development of United Kingdom law.